Hello guys, this is Tytar Jr. here. I'm here today going to show you a little bit about the Warcraft Reforged world editor. My experience when I was learning how to do this all these years ago on the original Warcraft 3, I was always looking for sources, online sources and things like that explain things really well, and there was a couple videos here and there, but the thing I experienced most was most of the people out there, they explain how to do map editing as if you already know the basics, or they kind of assume that you understand the basic logic behind the map building. Well, I decided to take a stab at this and put together a video series of videos that explain how you can make your own custom map that are really, really advanced and detailed, because I get a lot of people online and friends and family who want to make custom maps the way that I make them, and they ask me questions all the time, and it's very difficult to explain just sitting in front of somebody. So decided to do this video series. If you like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And then if you have any questions or ideas for future videos, go ahead and leave a comment. But the way I like to teach, whereas I find that other people in, I would say, game making in general, not just Warcraft 3 custom map videos, but in general, I feel like they don't really take the time to explain the why, and I like to explain the why, because if you understand the why, you can make a map that's more than just a map. You can make a map that's truly its own game, and that's what I'm trying to teach you guys here. So for this video, we're just going to cover something really, really basic. As you can see, I've got this little map that I've built here. It's just the basic standard map, and then I just took the tile tool. So if you press the T key on your keyboard, you can also find that by going to Window, and then under New Palette, you've got the terrain option. There's these other ones too. But if you want to do this, we're not going to be focusing on making your map beautiful or pretty or anything like that for this one. We're going to be focusing on triggers and regions, just the basics, fundamentals, the logic behind them. And so if you take a look, all I did here was apply cliff, increase 1, and then I zoom in, and as you can see, I did that. That's all I did. So undo that. But yeah, so the idea for this one that I think we're going to do here is we're going to make a very, very, very basic soccer game. Not even with a soccer ball, not even with multiple players, just you. If you run into the goal with your unit, you get a point. And it doesn't even keep track of your points. It just lets you know that, hey, you scored a point. It just tells you that. This is so we can understand the concepts of how this works. So let's get started. So we already have our map built here. I'm going to press escape to escape out of that. Close this. And so we're going to open up the trigger editor. It's this button right here, the little letter A. Okay. So normally, I've already deleted the trigger, but normally when you first open this up, it's going to say melee initialization. So if you're making a map that was going to be one that you play the normal game on, just your own version of it, you want to leave that trigger in here, because that basically allows your map to function like it's a normal melee map. You don't have to do any work for it. You just make the map look as pretty as you'd like. Okay, so we're going to hit this little button right here, new trigger. Okay, and so the idea is we have to think about this logically here. So our goal is to make it so that way when we enter this little zone here where my mouse is, or if you enter this little zone, it procs something that says you have scored a point. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's our goal. And so I'm going to name this trigger score left side. Okay, we're going to copy that with Control C, not the name, Control C, and then Control V. And the way I do this is I left click and then I middle mouse wheel click right afterwards. Okay, so once you do that, it does that. And you can change the text. Score right side. Okay? And so this is our standard layout for how a trigger is going to work. So triggers, what these do, this allows you to make the game exactly the way you want to make it, and you can get really, really in depth to where you can pretty much make any game you want to make, with a few exceptions here and there. There are some limitations, but it's pretty darn in depth with what you can do with it. Okay? So event, if you don't know what this is, this basically means what is happening or what does happen to then make something else happen. Because if you think about it, every single game out there is built off of event condition action. In other words, if this happens, then make this happen, else makes this happen. Okay? So with events, new event, this is one you're going to want to keep in mind. This one's called map initialization. What this does, we're not doing it here, but when you make your own map, this is really key, because this basically means on the event that the map opens, so the moment that this map opens up, what would you like it to do? And that's what actions are for. So map opens, fulfill all the actions. There are none here, but that's what you would do. And so we're not doing that here. We don't need that here. So I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to go to event. Now remember what our goal was. I'm going to go back to what our goal was here. Press cancel real quick. Our goal was to create a trigger that basically says when my unit enters here or here, it says something. It says you have scored on the left side of the field for this side. You scored on the right side of the field. This is to help explain the logic behind this, okay? So new event, and you click the drop-down menu, and you see all these options here. This can look kind of daunting at first, but it's actually really simple. If you can't find what you're looking for, or you think there's something that exists but you don't know the name of it, you can search for text, and then you can search unit, for example. Okay. Now there are less events than the actions, obviously, and so I typically just use the drop down, but you can type it, and I'm going to use the drop down just for when we're practicing. So unit enters region is the one we're going to want to use. Now the reason this is because we want it to be if somebody enters that box, which is right there or right there, then say something. We don't have our regions created yet, but we will. So when unit enters region, and so we're going to need to create a region. So we can click select region right here. And this little box right here, clicking this will create a region for you. Okay? So I've already clicked the box, and I'm going to drag, click right there. Okay? And now that that's made, I select region 000, and we will change the name of these regions, but for now, let's let it be. So a unit enters region 000. Then we want it to display the message, you have scored on the left side of the field. So basically, a unit enters the region. The action is, you have scored on the left side of the field. So there's two options we can do inside of this editor. We can do quest message or game message. Those are our two options here. So if you search game, actually let's do message. There is text message auto-timed and explicitly timed. Now if you want to be a jerk map maker and make a super long message that's timed only for a second, you can do that. Or in a more realistic sense, if you wanted to have a really long message but you felt like the auto-timed wasn't long enough, you can specifically time it to be longer. That's what these are for. Okay? And so there is a difference between game message and quest message. I prefer game message, but they do both have their purposes. Okay? For now, we're not going to get into that. We're just going to go, and now we've selected it, display to all players the text. What would we like it to say? You have scored on the left side of the field. I'm just going to hit OK. So, press OK. So now, whenever a unit enters that region, it's going to say, you have scored on the left side of the field. Before we get too far in, let's change the name of this. I right-clicked and then rename region. And then left score box. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it left score box. And we'll get into some of these other features later, but what's cool is you can set specific regions to have specific weathers. So if we wanted to do that, there's all these weather options, which is really, really cool. Not doing that here. You can also change the color of the region. The region is only visible in the editor. You don't actually see it when you're in game, but you can change it to different colors and things. Okay, but we're going to keep it there. And so I'm actually going to copy this with Control C and then Control V. And notice I've got my copycat region right here. And I'm just going to paste it right there. And I'm going to change the name to right score box. And then press OK. And now, score right side. I'm actually going to delete this and just copy this because then we've got all of our work already done here. And then I'm going to rename this. Remember, left click and then middle mouse click right afterwards. Score right side. Okay. A unit enters. See, I just opened that up by double clicking. Right score box. So we have our two regions now because we've made both of them. So I'm clicking on right score box. Okay. And then the message, we just double click this, and we're just literally changing left to the right. Perfect. Press OK. 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 Now, we're not quite done yet. We have one more step here. So if you press the U key, it brings up units. So as you can see, we have player 1 red selected. That's going to be you, especially when you're play testing different things. And the main player will be player 1 red by default. And so you always need a start location, especially if you're making melee maps that are custom. You're always going to need this, and in custom maps you're going to need these too. It won't let you do it without it. But what these are used for is this is where your camera is going to start as well. So if you had your start region somewhere random, because it'll pick it randomly for you if you don't choose, or if you're just like, oh, I just don't want to deal with them and put it over here, the camera's going to start way off yonder, and then your unit could be over here or something like that. So I'm going to put mine right in the center of the field, and then I'm going to put a footman right in the middle. So what's going to happen is the game's going to start right about here, and then we can test our trigger. Okay, so I'm going to hit test now, this test map button right here. Okay, so here we are, and as you can see on the map, there's this 2 score boxes over here. So I'm going to right click to make my unit run. And then I'm going to click right here. Watch what happens. You have scored on the left side of the field. Okay. Now remember, this is not the most realistic example, but you can kind of get an idea of what you can do with this. So I'm going to right click on the map right here so he runs into the second goal. You have scored on the right side of the field. So that's it for today's video. If you guys have questions for other topics, let me know. I will be making other videos on other topics that get progressively harder and harder. This is just very, very basic for those who don't know how to do map stuff at all. Just let me know what you guys want me to cover, and I will gladly cover it. I can make maps that are pretty detailed and intricate. So whatever topics you guys want to cover, just let me know. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video, and until next time, I will see you guys later.